JD Vance, America First is not just a slogan.
So thank you. So while other states were... So there I was, a 40-something high school teacher with little kids, zero political experience.
Compared to what's normal, both of these VP picks are fairly unknown. Walz was a surprise among Democrats who thought that it would be sort of bigger name people from swing states, for example. And for Vance, this was also a bit of a surprise pick on Trump's part. So I think, yeah, neither of them were ever in kind of the national spotlight in the way that previous picks were. So, you know, Barack Obama choosing Joe Biden had much more national recognition at that point.
Nice to meet you. Hey, can I call you Joe? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you. Thank you.
Your plan is a white flag of surrender in Iraq, and that is not what our troops need to hear today, that's for sure, and it's not what our nation needs to be able to count on.
There are moments where we can kind of realize that this debate is not so much about how one candidate performs against the other, so much as how one candidate is performing against expectations. So a good example of that, I think, would be Sarah Palin and Joe Biden in 2008, where the expectation was kind of that she was going to do terribly against Biden, a much more experienced politician than her. And she sort of held her own fairly well. It was not the disaster that some were predicting. And in that way, it was a success for her, even if it doesn't shift the polls too much.
And then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on. That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
And so Tim Walz is already proved to be a really adept communicator. He's weaving in, right, like this Midwestern folksy, you know, kind of response to politics, as well as these dad jokes and dad isms. But then he's also able to talk about policy, right? Someone who's been in Congress for a long time, someone who served as a mayor. He understands right, the real world issues, but can talk about them in ways that don't sound so policy wonky-ish.
We can expect this issue of immigration, especially the use of the stories, given what we saw in the previous debate, the cat-eating, dog-eating stuff. I imagine that would come up, as well as Vance's statements about, you know, using these sorts of stories to bring an issue to national attention. I think that he can quickly pivot from that to the issue of immigration. So getting him to focus on, you know, is it right to really exaggerate these stories, you know, based on minimal evidence? Is it right to do that? Should you be doing that on such a sensitive topic? Again, I think that Vance is a skilled communicator and won't spend very long on that without just pivoting to the severity of, you know, what they would deem the immigration crisis.
Here he comes, guys. JD Vance.
副大統領候補に指名された JD バンス上院議員が
It's empty. It's a little bit the calm before the storm. You see JD Vance standing at the lectern there. They found out not too long before we all did that he was going to be the former president.
Well, unfortunately, I think the train has left the station. There's not much that the Republicans can do to walk back what's already been done. Donald Trump's nomination of 3 conservative Supreme Court justices have really opened up Pandora's box of what happens when we repeal liberties that were found to be unconstitutional. And I think what we're going to see from Walz and what we'll continue to see from Kamala Harris is painting Republicans extreme on this measure.
Much as he will try to claim that he's one thing, his voting record and the evidence suggests that he is the very worst of modern American politics.
We know that Vance has a background that is fairly humble beginnings, and is not a wealthy background like Trump's. So that is a nice kind of offsetting. Walz can't necessarily attack him on that, but he certainly can attack the Trump and Vance campaign on the policies that they represent that don't do much to help working class voters. In this way, I think Walz has a little bit more the advantage in saying, look, my background is, I'm a very normal guy with a normal background, and I advocate policies that benefit normal people the most. And so I think that that's a line of attack that we'll most likely hear, even if Vance's own background is still somewhat relatable and fairly, a fairly impoverished background in terms of where VP picks in the past have traditionally been.
Donald Trump still hasn't conceded that if he loses the election, he will not, he will admit that he did not win and will have a peaceful transfer of power. And I think that JD Vance is going to have to stick really close because he's second in command here. He's going to have to stick very close to Trump's position on this. And Trump, we saw through the debate, has doubled down and said that he didn't have anything to do with January 6th, and that he sees that the people that were arrested for breaching the Capitol are martyrs. And so JD Vance is going to have to stick really close to the position that Trump has already laid out, which doesn't make it seem like there won't be another January 6th. In fact, I'm more scared of December 17th, where states have to certify the elections. And I think we might have many January 6s happening all over the country.
With the polling, even after the presidential debate that we watched, we didn't see polls shift a whole lot, even though that debate was fairly explosive and had some pretty, memeable moments. It didn't shift things all that much. So I wouldn't expect this to do much. That being said, we know that this is a very, very, very close race. And so thought about from another perspective, you have maybe 5 or 6% of the electorate still on the fence, still undecided, and little things could push them in one direction or another.